Welcome to this enrichment video on the principles of macroeconomics. Today we're going to apply what we've learned to the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, and using it to measure inflation to think about whether Social Security has a big enough COLA each year. COLA is a cost of living adjustment. So are seniors getting a big enough increase in their Social Security payments to compensate for higher prices? As you're aware, medical care is very expensive in the United States, and it gets more and more expensive each year. Medical care inflation tends to be pretty rapid, faster than the overall level of inflation, so these prices are increasing significantly year after year. And seniors, of course, consume a lot more medical care than the average person. So a lot of people have raised the question, since old people consume a lot of medical care, should their COLA get a bigger adjustment or put more weight on medical care? Basically, should we use a CPI that uses a different basket with a lot more medical care in the basket than the typical CPI for the typical urban worker, which is called CPIU? And just to remind you of what the basket is and how to calculate the CPI, the first step is that we pick a set of goods called the basket that we're going to use to measure the price level in the economy. And we also pick a base year. The base year we're just going to use as an arbitrary year, typically the first year you have data for, and set that to a CPI of 100. So the second thing we do is, now that we know what the basket is, we calculate the cost of that basket for each year. And then our third step is we divide the cost of that basket in each year by the cost in the base year, and then multiply by 100. So divide by base year cost. And that's a lot of tedious kind of work. Usually you'd use a computer to do this, or on a spreadsheet or a statistical package. But once you've run the numbers, you get a CPI that measures the price level for each year. It'll be 100 in the base year and then typically higher in each subsequent year because of inflation. But as you can see, it really depends on what you put in the basket. If you put in the basket a lot of goods that don't have their prices increasing by very much, then the CPI won't increase by very much each year, and then the COLA, the cost of living adjustment, won't be very big each year because supposedly prices aren't increasing much. So is it fair, should we be putting more medical care in the basket for seniors and then giving them bigger COLAs to compensate them for their high cost of living? It's a big political issue, so I'm not going to get into my opinions on it, but it's something worth thinking about. Senator Warren from Massachusetts, our state senator, is a big proponent of making adjustments for how Social Security's cost, or at least not changing it to make the COLAs smaller, and you can read about that in the newspaper. The sort of economic issue I want to get at, though, is, are medical care price indices even calculated correctly? Usually when we do the CPI, we don't make any adjustments for the quality of the goods changing over time. So medical care, when you go to the hospital, you don't really get the same care that you used to. Lots of things have been invented over the past, 50 years, and they continue to invent new things. There's SSRIs were invented in 1988, or first came on the market in 1988. They treat depression. There's ACE inhibitors. These lower your blood pressure. They were invented in 1975. Methotrexate is a cancer treatment that prevents your cells from creating thymine residues, which makes it impossible to replicate the DNA and then the cancer cells to divide. And Gleevec is a relatively new treatment, is a very targeted treatment for a specific type of cancer. So there's lots and lots of new treatments and higher quality treatments you can get when you go to the hospital. And the CPI isn't really adjusted effectively for these, so maybe medical inflation is much smaller than you would think it is. And a few economists actually looked at costs of living when you adjust for quality for heart attack care, so not for all medical care as a whole. And arguably heart attack care has sort of improved in quality more rapidly than other medical care. But when they did the exercise, they found that when you adjust for quality, arguably the cost of medical care is actually decreasing from year to year. There's deflation in medical care costs because the quality is getting so much better and the prices are only increasing a little bit, not enough to offset the quality improvements. So this is just food for thought, and I think it helps highlight some of the biases in the CPI that you should be aware of. You should also be aware of the new goods bias and the substitution bias that are discussed in the textbook. Thanks for watching.